Okay, hello everybody. Welcome. I'm glad you all could attend. We're actually going to get started here in just a second. At any rate, I'd like to thank you all for coming to the Detailing Cross Sections webinar. My name is Chris Congleton. We'll actually be hearing from Wendy Southworth, and Patrick Stone on this subject. They've actually got a lot of information for you, which will hopefully be very helpful for you in your daily needs. Just a upcoming schedule. On July 1st, we will be doing the Google Earth Pro using MicroStation. Troy Woodyard will be actually doing that presentation. And then on the 22nd, we'll actually be doing a working day software demonstration by Roy Sturgill. Those should be pretty good. We're kind of cramming some more stuff in here, more than we usually do, probably just to make up for the fact that we've had to reschedule this particular webinar a few times now. We apologize for that, but we've got everything together and ready now, and it should be a good presentation. I want to remind you that past webinars can be found on the KYTC Highway Design and Software and Support page. Just Google KYTC Highway Design and it'll bring you to this page. And then just if you look down at the red arrow, the software and support link will actually take you to the previous recordings of the webinars. For any MicroStation inroads or project-wise questions, email us at kytcadsupport@ky.gov. We can answer most of your questions. We might have to actually dig in to get some other questions for you answered. Some reminders. If you're actually attending the webinar and you're wanting professional development hours, you have to be present for the entire webinar to earn those development hours. Anyway, we've had some issues in the past where people weren't actually attending the whole time. The software allows us to see how many minutes you actually spent attending the webinar, and we don't want to upset anybody, so we're just letting you know that up front. And also, if you could, please participate in our survey at the end of the webinar. It'll actually come up when the webinar closes. So before we actually start, I'd like to send out a couple of polls here, and if you could just answer them at the best of your ability. Okay, we're getting some votes in here now. Okay, looks like we've leveled off here. Looks like about 50% of you have actually been to a webinar before. There's quite a few of you have been to less than 5, so that's good. We're actually getting some good attendance. Let's go to the next poll here. Let's see if you actually went to the last webinar. Okay, it looks like we've leveled out here, and everybody's voted who wants to vote. Looks like we actually had 70%, a little over 70% that attended last time, which is great. And for you people that didn't attend last time, I hope you enjoy this one. So without further ado, we'll actually go ahead and let Wendy start her presentation. Wendy, are you ready there?
I'm ready.
Okay, here you go.
All right, you got my screen up, Chris?
I do.
Okay. All right, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Detailing Cross-Sections webinar. I'm going to talk a little bit about our agenda for this morning. Today's agenda will include updates that have been made to the graphic standards. When we started preparing this webinar, there were several changes that were made to the graphic standards. The roadway.cell and the sheet.cell library both have had cells added or that have been updated in both those cell libraries. So those have been updated, and the XIN, which is the preference file, and the DFT, which is the drafting notes files, were also updated. And I don't think that they have been updated to our website currently, but we will have that very soon updated to our website so that you would be able to get in there and download the workspace. We are also going to talk about areas of emphasis today in detailing cross-sections, and this is kind of what KYTC would like to see on the detailed cross-sections and that are turned in with the final plans. Some of the details include annotation, dimensioning, earthwork quantities, cells to be used, and their location on the cross-sections will also be discussed. And then last but not least, Patrick Stone will do a demonstration showing the different examples for detailing your cross-sections and adding drafting notes and all that good stuff. Okay, so as far as the KYTC graphic standards, KYT staff, the cell libraries will be automatically downloaded to your workspace. If you are in an existing project folder, you may need to reattach the cell libraries, which the ones that you would need, like I said earlier, would be the roadway.cell and the sheet.cell through the cell libraries dialog box through inroads. Each individual will need to update, this is for KYTC staff still, each individual will need to update your XIN file and your DFT file for any existing projects, and these files can be found in ProjectWise if you go to Documents, Common Files, Graphic Standards Workspace, Graphic Standards Current, and then they're located in that ProjectWise folder, whichever file you need. And remember that if you already have an XIN file or DFT file in your current project folder, when you copy the new file into your project folder, you'll need to name it, rename it. I would suggest maybe putting the date on it so that way you know when you downloaded that file or copied that file, I mean, to your project, and so that way it won't override your existing file, especially if you've done some customization to your XIN or your drafting notes file. As far as consultants, all changes will be updated to the KYTC design website as soon as we get that. I guess we'll send out an email to let you all know. So you'll want to go to our highway design webpage, click on resources, it's on the right side of the page, and then click on the CAD standards, and then you'll click on download the latest CAD standards workspace, and this will be an executable file that is compressed into a zip file and can be downloaded directly to your PC. And if there are any questions or anything, when it comes to that, you'll be able to email our CAD, send an email to our CAD support email, and we'll be able to help you out with that. All right, so now we'll get to our areas of emphasis. We want to talk about scale and exaggeration. Normal scale and exaggeration for cross-section sheet is normally 1 inch is equal to 10 feet, horizontal and vertical, but it is perfectly acceptable to have a section of cross-sections or an entire set of cross-sections at a different scale. So say you have a large area, a worldwide area, you're doing a big cut or something, and you got to go out like 500 feet or something. For that one area, you can have a scale of like 1 inch is equal to 20 feet, so that you can fit that whole cross section onto one section. Or if you have a smaller area and you need, you don't need as much space, you can also do a 1 inch is equal to 5 foot scale if you need to. And also, this is helpful because especially for the bigger scale, because it will mean you won't have to use match lines or anything like that. It will eliminate the use of the match lines. Intervals, normal cross-section intervals are 50 foot by default. However, if you have a project that is shorter or contains specific areas of concern, it is okay to use a smaller interval, and vice versa. If you have a longer project that doesn't change drastically from section to section, it is okay to use a larger interval to cut those cross sections too. The interval to be used can be established in your project's pre-design meeting and can change from project to project. So you just want to make sure you set that up, to go ahead and predetermine your intervals on your cross sections. And finally, cross sections should match up with the stationing used on your profile so that stations and elevations can be easily determined going from cross section to profile. Okay. Other areas of emphasis are existing underground utilities. Several new underground utility cells have been added to the roadway.cell library. There are now 3 different cells for water, storm sewer, sanitary gas, telephone, television, and electric underground utilities. For the underground utilities where the elevation is known, whether from vacuum excavation or backhoe and shovel excavation, which is a SUE quality level A, the elevation at the top of the pipe will be shown on a horizontal line. And you can kind of see that in the first example there, existing water line elevation equals. So you have an elevation equals there, and the point will be at the top of the pipe. And just to kind of go over, I know I mentioned SUE quality levels. There are 4 SUE quality levels. There's A, which is where the elevation is known. And then quality level B, you have a known X and Y location, which is obtained by geophysical method, which is a wire tracer or ground penetrating radar, but you do not know your elevation. So, and then quality level C has been surveyed, just the markers have been surveyed in the field and may not necessarily know where it goes in between those markers, but you just assume it's probably a straight line. So that's quality level C. Quality level D is just utility information that you have obtained or gathered from utility maps, property owners, or GIS. And with quality level D, there has actually been no survey completed. So that's just the FYI on all that quality level stuff. And see, for underground utilities with an assumed elevation, a cell has been created that consists of a vertical line, which is the second example shown on the slide, that extends down from the existing ground, and the elevation is noted as assumed, as you see there. For underground utilities where the elevation is unknown, but the water company, for example, has stated that the water line is located 36 inches below the existing ground, a cell has been created that locates that point with just an existing waterline vertical note, no elevation noted. Okay. As far as embankment benching goes, it'll also be shown on the detailed cross sections. Embankment benching is the approximate location that follows a logical path for equipment to excavate a bench. So these bench excavating location, or these embankment benching locations are included in the geotechnical recommendation report that is completed for each project. The embankment benching quantities total will be shown in the earthwork quantities header at the top of the last cross-section sheet, and I think Patrick will go over, I think I'll talk about it here in a little bit, but we'll go over that into detail as far as that earthwork quantities header that I'm talking about. Entrances will also be shown on the cross-section set. These cross-sections are actually entrance profiles that are shown as a cross-section. If an entrance falls between the cross-section interval, and a special cross-section should be inserted to show the entrance. The grade should be with a detailed note describing the entrance. So you'll want to include the entrance station, whether it's left or right of center line, if the entrance is skewed, and if it is skewed, to what degree it is skewed, and if it's skewed to the left or right. And you'll want to be careful to separate your entrance earthwork quantities on these cross sections from the mainline earthwork quantities, so that you don't double count for earthwork quantities for that entrance. All right, ditches. All ditches should be shown on cross sections. The ditch bottom elevation should be annotated. Ditches should be a minimum of 1 foot deep, and if less than 1 foot deep, the fill should be daylighted. It is essential that engineering judgment be used when designing any ditches. And finally, I'm going to talk about cross-section headers. They are included on the updated cross-section and are included in the sheet cell library. They summarize the total of all the earthwork quantities and are located on the last cross-section sheet. Earthwork items that should be included, but not limited to, are common embankment, left and right ditches, rock road bed, coal, left and right embankment benches, and granular embankment. And of course, there probably are more of that, more of those, but Patrick will talk a little bit more about that as far as each cross section goes. So anyway, I think I'm ready for Patrick to start our demo, and that's all for me.
All right, Chris, let me get set up here real quick. Okay, I'm going to go through and just show you what Wendy had talked about earlier. Just give you some examples, tell you what we're thinking, and give you some suggestions. Okay, we're not asking you to go back and change sales and jobs that you're already working on. We would encourage you to use the preferred workflow that we've shown, that Wendy ran through, and that I'm going to be showing you in this for new starts. And with that said, we've got just a few cell changes. The first cell changes I'm going to talk about are the ones in the sheet cell library. And then we'll go on and talk about some utility cells that we've placed in the roadway library. And then we'll talk about, just briefly go over some drafting tools, and I'll show you how we recommend getting your edge of pavements and stuff on your cross sections. First of all, let's talk about these sheet cells. There's been a few sheet cells changed, like I said, 3 of them. Our in-house folks, they're in ProjectWise. You can use them now. And then for the consultants, we were going to have those out today, but I found a mistake that I'd made in the drafting notes that I need to fix. So it will probably be Friday, but we'll send out, like Alex always does, to all the consultants that are on the list and everything. The KYTC people will have it. It should be done by Friday, or it'll be done today probably, but we'll say Friday. Okay, the first cell that changed is the first cross-section sheet. Now, as you can see, we've put these columns in, headings, and this is the way we want them quantified. And we've seen some of you are already doing this. That way, you can total the quantities going up the sheet. And I know that's annoying as heck, so I'll show you later how you can get around that auto highlight. A few different tips for working with that. And a lot of you already know. But these were made in the sheet cell library. The second one is this is the one you usually use. This goes on all your cross-section sheets. Once you use the preference, it's already linked in the En-ROADS preference. So when we update these cells and you use the preference, as long as you've got the new workspace, you'll get these cells automatically put on there. The last change that we've made to this sheet cell libraries is we've added a header cell, and this is used to put on the sheets without grid lines all over it. I always call them the plan sheet ones. They're a little cleaner looking in my opinion, but we still want this gridded for tabulation. The cell origin, I want to note where the cell origin is on this. So when you're placing it, it'll go right here at the end of the county thing. We don't want to see, like, these are blank, and we'd like to see those removed by the time the job is submitted. We don't want to go through and look at columns up here that don't have anything in it, and we don't want to see the zeros. But we'll get into that in a few minutes. We'll just stay on with the sales for right now. We'll just remember to remove any unused columns. And Wendy talked about these sales. We added about 18 sales to the sale library, and what I'm going to do is go through and show you how to place every sale in the library. So this might take like 2 or 3 hours, but we'll go through every single one of them, and if we have to, we'll take a break around lunch. I'm just kidding. I already see people jumping off this thing. I'm just kidding. What we're going to do is just talk about, for a few minutes, I'll just show you the waterline one here is what we were talking about showing. And this would be the same for all of them, but we'll just use this as an example. And I know I'll repeat a lot of stuff in this that Wendy said, but we think it's important, so we're intentionally repeating this, so bear with me. Now this cell, this existing waterline 1, this is for the assumed. And just like Wendy had said before, it's intended to be used in the case that you have no elevation. Example, you have the lines marked by Bud and shot in, but you don't have a depth. So used to, we'd put it over, we would use this one, we had approximate elevation and put that in. Well, the only time we want this used is when you have the known elevation. That way, when right away or utilities or somebody's looking through here, they know which ones we don't have as good an idea on this one or the waterline 3 as we do on the known elevation. So, for example, on this existing waterline 2, it's intended to be used in the case you have known elevation, like expose the top of the pipe, however that might be, and shot it in. Vacuum excavation, shovel, however you get down to the top of this, shoot this in. Now, it should be noted that these sales are just graphic. They've always, this is not a 20-inch line. This is just to represent there's existing water line here. So please note that all these elevations are to the top of the pipe, of course. We've had questions about that in the past that, where is it? Well, when you're digging down, you're going to hit the top of the pipe. We don't know what they've got wrapped around or anything. All we know is the top elevation, and that's the intent of what we're showing on these. Now, the example 3, or the existing water line 3, just like Wendy said before, this is intended to be used in the case that you have unproven elevations. Example, you have the water lines marked, we have plans that say they're 30 inches, or somebody from the water company says those are about 30 inches. Then we will just place this 30 inches below the ground, and it's not marked, but they get a good idea of where the water line is. And another thing to note, I don't know how you all place these, but the way I usually do this is I get my water lines, I drape them over the surface. For this one, I would just drape the existing surface. For this one, I would do an offset. Well, excuse me, for this one, I would put in the known elevation because we're going to have core holes or test holes everywhere, and I would enter those in my plan sheet, and then I would project them to the cross sections. And this one, we would offset that, whatever they say it's 30 inches, 36. I would just offset that feature. I'm not saying that's the way you have to do it. You can go in here and place it on every cross section if that's what makes you happy. That's the workflow that I use. If you do it another way, good for you. Okay, next thing we're going to talk about is I'm just going to take a few minutes, show you how to turn on the features in En-ROADS. Now, I know you know how to turn on features, but there's been several questions about how do we turn on just the edge of pavements and annotate everything else. It's not really tricky, but to me, it's not intuitive, I guess you'd say. Anyway, we'll hop in this, and I've set up just models. One little side note too that I've found, when you've got a bunch of models in here, if you're annotating or working in these cross-section sets, if you have a cross-section set that's pulled up, let's say, for instance, and you're doing a, let's see, say I want to annotate this cross-section. See how I've got different cross-section sets here? If you choose the wrong one and turn on features, it will take you to that model. And a lot of you probably already know that, but I didn't. It about drove me crazy because every time I'd pick the wrong one, it hopped me to a different model where those were cut. It could be handy or it could be a pain in the tail. Anyway, I'm just giving you a little heads up on that. Okay, I'll just run through the basic steps on how to turn these crossing features on. First, you're going to make sure you select your cross-section set, which, as we all know, you can see it with a box around it. I'm going to move this off to the side. Well, I'll try to keep some of this stuff up here so you can see what's going on. The next step is we're going to update the crossing features. I've already cut these. I've got all my stuff turned on as far as the components and all, but we're going to be basically working with crossing features, and we've went over this before in other presentations. The crossing features are, crossing the cross section. So what you have to do is make sure you select the cross section set that you're working on. And what I do is I like to turn them all on. See, what you're getting is you've got these pluses, and then you'll have a C for like the center of the template. And this is set up in your template library, as you well know. But I think this is handy when you're trying to annotate. Like, we're going to annotate this existing edge of pavement and the center line here. We want this other edge of pavement. If you have these turned on and you haven't worked on this project, like I wasn't familiar with this job because I just kind of took it to show today. You can go in here and use the element information tool, and you'll get in inroads. You'll get what the styles are, like right edge of pavement. You can go through here and see what you want to annotate. Like, I'm going to want to annotate this one right here. So that's going to be left shoulder. Several ways to do that. And I will show you in a second how to deal with this grid, because it can be a little frustrating. But first, I'm starting to ramble. I'll try to rein myself back in. We'll annotate the cross sections. I want to annotate the existing centerline elevations. So, and this hasn't changed. This is just going to be the annotate cross sections. Pick your preference. Let me close this. Annotate. Existing. This one hasn't changed at all, as I was saying. This is existing. We'll apply that. We've got our existing on there. Now, this is where things get a little bit different to get the edge of the pavement elevation. So we're going to go ahead and set this to the proposed elevation, or the proposed annotation, I'm sorry. We'll select our proposed surface. And now we're going to concentrate. We're going to have to go down here and select what we've turned on, which one of these features. And like I was showing before, there's several different ways to pick these features, and you could go in and select them off of the plan view, however you want. Most people are probably going to know what they name their edge of pavements. If you don't, use the identification tool. So I know what these are, so we're just going to go in here and we'll go to feet. Go in here and do the crossing features. Got to select our surface that we're on. I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong. We've got all these. Since we turned them on a minute ago, we've got all these longitudinal features. So let's select the ones that we want to annotate. Because if I do it now, I'm going to every single one of these. That's not what I want. And remember, the control key allows you to select multiple points. So let's do the left shoulder. inside edge of pavement. We'll do the right shoulder, right inside edge of pavement.
Hey, Patrick. We actually had a little bit of problem hearing you about the last 2 minutes. Do you think you could go over what you did again, please?
Yes. At what point did you lose me on the cross sections or turning these on? Where did you lose me?
Basically just turning those on. Yeah, if you could just go over that again. We had a little bit of technical difficulty there. If you could just go over that again, that'd be great.
Okay. What we had to do was go in here and turn on the crossing features. And you do that under the, the update cross sections where I did that, crossing features, and you had to select the surface that your features are in. And these are all, I know they're in this East Brandon Ultimate. So you go in here and just pick the one. I highlight them all. And like you can do that. You can see what you've got selected here. We've got every one of them. They have to be turned on in order to annotate between them the way we've changed this preference to display. So after we have these crossing features turned on, we're going to go back and annotate them. So we'll go to annotate, and since we've got them turned on, we'll go through and we'll select these. And I know that I want to select the left shoulder, the inside edge of pavement. So you go through and you select which ones you want. Left shoulder, inside edge of pavement, right shoulder, and then we'll do the right inside edge of pavement. And if you hold the control key down, you can select multiple ones. Now if we apply that, let me see here what I've done. Okay, having a little difficulty here myself. The include features should be turned on, which it was not. And it is in the preference, or it will be turned on. It needs to be turned on there. So and I'll fix this preference to rotate at 90. I don't know what's going on with that preference, but this will be rotated up 90, and I'll show you what it's going to look like. Let's see. This is what we want it to look like, rotated 90. I'll fix that preference. I thought I had it fixed, but obviously I didn't. What I was talking about earlier, once you get this turned on, I want to talk about the auto highlight. And it bothers you. It's a pain, in my opinion, the way every time you hop on this puppy, it jerks around. You get the auto highlight. There's several ways you can deal with that. If you select anything other than the element selection, then you can still get the information on your crossing features. I think that's probably the best way to turn that basically off, but we've got it set where it automatically comes to the element selection tool, which is fine. I mean, it's pretty handy. It's just kind of cumbersome in the cross sections, in my opinion. But I like to have it on if I'm in a cross sections that I didn't create, so I can go through and identify those elements. Another way you can turn that off is you can come up to the AccuSnap, and if you turn off the identify elements automatically, then you won't have that issue either of it auto highlight and everything. But you won't get the information. All you'll get, well, let's just turn it off. When you highlight those crosses, well, we'll make a line around me. if I had those features turned on, all you'd see those the level. I keep getting the component instead of those pluses because we're not in that view. Just remember, you can turn that off, and it's not nearly as aggravating when you're not getting the whole grid. So if you turn that on and you have the AccuSnap, the identify elements automatically, that's when you start getting that whole grid highlighted. It's kind of a, I'm going to turn that back off because it aggravates me. Okay, we're going to jump into several models and just look around and try to give you an idea of what we would like to see. Now, on this one, we'll be focused on what it looks like cleaned up. Those were just ones we cut, and I will fix that preference where these are rotated 90 and everything. There's several different ways you can finish the detailing on these cross sections. You could turn on the leaders for elevations. You could stick draw them. You know, I like to use the dimensioning tool, and like this is a larger project, you know, not a bridge replacement. And what we want to see is we want to change, I don't know if the changes, we used to have these earthwork tabulations to the far left. We'd like to see them placed right where I've got them shown, and these have been updated in the En-ROADS preferences. And I will double check before I send it out to make sure that we haven't overwritten it with something else. We'd like to see this rounded to the nearest square foot, the cubic yards to the nearest cubic yard, and we want these set up so you can tabulate them going straight up the sheet. Now, when you only have a job that's got embankment, ditch right, we don't want to see the other columns, but there's no need to go back and fill in these holes in your sheet. And I'll go over in a little while how you can edit these, because these are placed in the cell. They're not data fields, but you can edit them. You can change them, you know, to whatever suits your job. And I'll talk about that in a few minutes. We want the elevation shown. We would like to see all the lane lines dimensioned and the elevation at the edge of the pavement. Now, since this is a constant 2% slope, you can put one in the middle. We don't need to see them all the way across. But what I was saying earlier is if you're annotating all these features and you say, well, why don't I just not turn on all the pluses down through here, you'll only get the features annotated between that you have displayed. So just note that, because if you just did the edge of pavements and center lines, you wouldn't get the slopes up here, the 2-to-1 slopes down here. You wouldn't get any of your ditch slopes. And I want to point out that we want the elevation shown, you know, the slopes. We want this detailed so they can go through, and they being the contractor can go through and have enough information to build every one of these cross sections without flipping through the sheets and, you know, guessing or looking at plan sheets. They need to have enough detail to build all these. And I'll show you a little bit on the ditch notes here probably in the next slide. Okay. So let me switch here to small job. This is one I did a while back with some notes on it, and it is a smaller job. But I want to point out the notes. This is an example of a bridge replacement. Now, I want to note the edge of shoulder transitions, the pavement transitions, the super elevation transitions for both the left and the right. Now, in the bigger projects, you know, the super, we've had conversations over these super notes. If you've got a super on a big job, down the middle, you know, you're not at the tie-ins. This is probably more of a tie-in situation. Then, you know, the super elevation note will go right in the middle, of course. But on these smaller jobs, we want to provide all the information, you know, tell them about the shoulders, where to do the earthwork, tell them all the transition, begin shoulder. And I'm not saying this is the exact format that you have to use, but we want to see all the information so they don't have to go into the inroads files and look. It needs to be all on the sheet so they can build it. And just make sure, in short, just make sure you have sufficient detailing for every cross section. Another thing that we've been told helps right away, folks, is let's say you've got an existing building. Now, obviously, I just slapped these on here so I could show you, but got an existing building. It's really close to this edge of shoulder, or this fill slope, I mean. Well, they're going to need to know it. Even if we're not disturbing it, we're so close to it that they won't have to go back to the plan sheets, or this will alert them to look at the plan sheets and how close we are to it. And we got a proposed easement way out here. Well, if we're showing it on there, this is going to let them know, okay, we've got a diversion or a detour, we've got something going on through here. And we need to look and research that so they can tell the property owner what's going on. These foundation and embankment benches, I want to point those out. We've been getting a lot of cross sections in that don't have many details on them, and people are forgetting to put this quantity on from your geotech report. We need to be showing this stuff. Now, on this example, like on the previous example, I was showing you that the dimensions were all the same. We weren't in a taper. You can dimension just the first cross section, but now in this case, we're going through a transition here. Let's see. I think it starts right up here. We just want to show all the way through the transition. Now, of course, the slope's changing. That's going to be on everyone, but we're in the middle there. You can see that the lane is transitioning over here. We're widening it out to get across probably to go to the bridge. And we want it all noted. Make sure you've got plenty of notes on there to show them how to build this. And just to mention them until you get back to your typical section. What I usually do is go through here and dimension these until I get back to my known. Like if it's 11 and 11 with 4 foot, I would keep dimensioning them until I got to 11 11 with 4 foot. And I would dimension that one. It would be the last one. I wouldn't dimension another one until it started changing. Then I would dimension the cross section that was basically the typical section, so they know when this change begins and note it appropriately. And at a bare minimum, we want one dimension, one of these cross sections, the first cross section on every sheet dimensioned, so they don't have to flip back and forth from sheets to know what the dimensions are. We're going to talk a little bit about these utility cells and just show you how we envision these to be used. We're just going to show you 3. And just like I said before, I will place this draped. I draw my line in my plan view, drape it on the surface, attach this cell to that feature. It's going to draw them all on there. It's pretty easy, pretty quick. And remember, this is intended to be used where you don't know the elevation. We know it's here, we don't know the elevation. Now this one, we've had this one vacuum excavated. I know exactly where this point is. Well, I know where some points are. So, I'm going to draw those points in, and I usually put it in a surface for utilities. Put it at the correct elevation, and then attach this cell to that feature and have inroads draw it in. Same one goes with this. This is our, we know, we've had Bud shoot this in. They say it's 30, 36 inches deep. So we're going to show it like that. Point out that not pipe section sheets, we prefer to see the longitudinal figures on. We've had several requests from construction and utilities. If we could show this on there, it would really help them when they're out doing what they're doing, their coordination and stuff, if it was on the cross sections and the pipe sheets. Now, the cross drains and stuff, no, you're not going to be able to show those.
Hey, Patrick. I'm sorry to interrupt.
What?
When you first opened that sheet, we got a little bit of garbling. It sounds like your computer's having trouble keeping up. Could you start back from the beginning when you first opened up that sheet, please?
Yes. What I was saying is all I wanted to point out in this is that these are not pipe sections. They're cross-section sheets. And we want to show the 24-inch storm pipe or pretty much any of these longitudinal features. We want them to be shown on the cross-sections. Now, and the reason we want that is we've had utilities and other departments asking us for this information. They say it helps with their coordination and the negotiations, and if they have to look at pipe sheets and cross-section sheets, then it confuses some of the owners that they're talking to. They just want to show them what's going on and where it's at. Now we're going to talk briefly about some of the sheet totals. And most people are doing this, and I just cut out some sheet totals just to show you. Now I realize that you're not going to have every one of these headers. I made up these numbers, as you can tell. But the point of this is, at the last mainline sheet, we'd like to see a total. For whatever quantities you have, we want them totaled. We're not talking about doing sheet totals. We're just talking about doing pretty much alignment totals. Now the approach, I'd want to see the mainline totals, approach totals, and then we would have a project total sheet. Now I say approach, mainline, and project totals. If you had a ramp, pretty much if you're working on a project and you have ramps or anything else, we want totals on all that stuff. Pretty much if you have an alignment on it, you need a total. You need a quantity for it. And if you're on a project that you feel, I've got so many totals, I need a separate sheet, there's nothing wrong with having a cross-section yardage sheet. If it makes sense, then, by all means, add it to your plans. And just a couple more things that we want to talk about. We've said for years is not to drop the sheet borders. And I know that can be a problem. And we'll just show you basically the we'll just show basically the I've opened up the wrong deal here. We'll do it in there. If you go in here and you drop these sheet borders, or let me place one. Now you can go in here and you can use the edit text, and that's what you're going to have to do on these headers. Like if you want that to say coal, or I don't know what you're going to have, but these are easily changed just using the edit text. If you don't want them, you can hit the delete button. Well, you can, but you're not going to get anything. You got to have one character there. So space bar will blank that out, and that's what I'd recommend doing, towards the end of your project when you know all the quantities you have. But one problem that we've been having is that the text editor is different than the data fields. And you can get to it both. And what I mean by that, on these, when I click that with the text editor, it pulls up just the text. Now if you open that again, you get the data field. And let's say this data field is still intact. And that's important because if you come in here and just use the edit text, now you can make that exactly the text you want to say. But see, it's not a data field anymore. You can still edit it. But the problem that causes is when you go through and you use the eSheet macro or some of the other programs up here, it'll error because you've deleted the data field and it's searching for the data fields. It's getting the county of, you're getting your station to station, and if you break that, it's going to error on you. You're not going to get your index sheet. It's going to give you problems. It's just not a good idea to edit that instead of use the data field. But it can be confusing the way it's set up now. Just remember, if you're using the data fields, there is a data field, single data field editor, or you can use the edit text. But if you use the edit text, just make sure that you double click on this piece of text and see this, or you will be editing those data fields. Okay. Now I just want to point out, I'm not going to go off on this drafting notes thing, but I do want to point out that we've got under drafting, place cross-section notes, under the existing, we've added the electric line, gas line, sanitary sewer, and we'll hop into one of these other models. And they work the same as, all the other drafting tools. Should work. Now remember that you have to have your surface loaded, you have to be inside the cross-section grid, and that doesn't mean way up here, just in this datum that you've cut. And I know that this is not, we want this to be a solid line, and I'll fix that. I need to set up a new feature definition that's got, just a 0 line style, and I'll fix that today before we send out the standards. But that's what we intend those to be used for, if they're helpful. And we can set up notes, drafting notes for the ditches, begin, end, but as long as you're conveying the information, we don't really want to dictate the verbiage. As long as it's all there, good. And with that, Chris, I think we can turn it back over and you can do your poll.
Before we actually get out there, Patrick, we have a couple questions. If you could answer them. Let's see here. One of them was, this might be a little off topic, but how did you get the existing and proposed elevations to line up with each other?
Oh, those were manually moved. I mean, we've been looking at the datum and stuff and moving them to a specific offset, but it's kind of moves everything there. So there, this. Let me go in here real quick. Yeah, this is manual cleanup here, moving these puppies. Now these are offset the same distance, so these were all fine. But like the existing, where I cut it at the other one, it's way down here because it's offsetting it from this grid here. There's ways you can manipulate this to get it across the same point or same elevation, but it doesn't seem to be consistently correct. So, the data is correct, but the offset looks kind of jacked up. You still got to get in there and do some manual manipulation.
Okay, thanks. And also, we have another question here that's actually a good question. Well, I just lost it. I'm sorry. Will En-ROADS break out the ditch totals for you?
Yeah, I think you can set it up to break out any of the totals that you want. I just didn't break out any of the totals on these just because um, I wasn't going to set up a preference for everything we had. You can, I do recommend that you leave the common and embankment. You know, we're able to get the common and embankment here, and if we had this different surface, we can put the ditch right over here, and you can move these columns. But yeah, that can be, you can break any of those out.
Okay, and it also, there's a question here. It asks, should we offset each section just once on the bottom of each sheet? And I think that also ties into a question too, a little bit of, we only want to dimension the first cross section, and any changes in the cross section on that sheet thereafter, we want to actually note those changes in the following cross section, correct?
Yeah, and you know, that's going to be up to you. If you want to offset these up a little more, I assume you're talking about because you don't want it all crowded the way we usually see them. Let's see how this one did. But I think that would be perfectly fine. If it's getting a little crowded down here for them, yes, I mean we can change that preference to go up a little higher. I mean, we just want to make sure all the detailing's on there. So whatever you think is necessary to make it look the best, then by all means, do it.
And there was one other question here about showing how to put the right-of-way on the cross sections. That would basically be the same way we put these other cells on, correct?
Yes, that's correct. And I thought we did that. No, we haven't done that a webinar on that yet, I don't think. We've put some ditches on, but we're going to do one on right-of-way, and you know, we're still waiting on that chapter to be written as far as like the deed descriptions and stuff. So we can go over that. In that one, we can go over it. But if they've got a specific want or need, they can call any of us at CAD or email us on that CAD support website, and we can help them do that. I've done that before, so.
All right, that's great. I appreciate it, Patrick. Thanks for your time, and I'll go ahead and take it here, and we'll wrap up and do the questions at the end. Thanks again, Patrick. Thank you, Wendy. Again, we'd like to thank you for attending and remind you to please wait until after the presentation is over and answer the questions that we have for you. Those are very good for us to determine what you want to learn about. We've actually got a pretty full schedule here for the next few months, but any suggestions you can make would be grateful for those suggestions. So again, thank you for coming, and again, if you have any questions, please contact us and we'll answer you as best we can. Thanks again.